On the brink of financial collapse, millions of Americans find themselves trapped in a swirling vortex of debt and despair. Imagine the paralyzing sensation of suddenly losing your job, an unexpected medical emergency draining your savings to the last drop, or an urgent, costly home repair that seems utterly impossible to afford. For a significant portion of the population, this isn't a distant fantasy, but a cruel and overwhelming reality that materializes without warning. In 2023, over 400,000 Americans filed for bankruptcy, a somber figure that underscores the latent fragility of their finances in the face of the unexpected, and highlights the imperative need for more robust planning. At the core of this widespread vulnerability lies a brutal yet often neglected truth: the absence of a robust financial safety net, the often underestimated and sometimes ignored emergency fund. This in-depth series will unravel the secrets of how to build this unshakable fortress, transforming paralyzing fear into a tangible sense of security and agonizing uncertainty into assertive control over one's financial destiny. Prepare to discover the keys to protecting your future, definitively shielding yourself from financial rock bottom and ensuring a solid foundation for prosperity. The call came on a rainy Tuesday, in the middle of the afternoon, and the jarring ring of the office phone seemed to echo the storm brewing outside. David, a 42-year-old mechanical engineer living in the charming suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, felt a deep, icy chill run down his spine as he saw the HR department's number from the large corporation where he had dedicated the last 15 years of his professional life relentlessly flashing on his caller ID. His mind, almost by instinctual self-preservation, was already bracing for the worst possible scenario. On the other end of the line, the formal, monotonous, and emotionless voice of the Human Resources Director confirmed his gravest fears, uttering cold, cutting words like restructuring, cost optimization, and finally, the fatal sentence: "Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately." A tight, painful knot formed in his throat, a suffocating weight on his chest that felt like it was crushing him. David, who had always considered himself a successful man and exemplary provider for his family, father of 2 vibrant daughters, and burdened with a substantial mortgage, watched his meticulously built world turn upside down in a matter of mere minutes, spiraling into uncertainty. He had some scattered savings in different accounts, a bit in a regular savings account, some invested in low-risk stocks that hadn't yielded much, but nothing that could actually sustain his family for a significant period without his primary income, the one that guaranteed his household's stability. The idea that his financial stability, which he had believed to be so solid and unshakable, was in fact so fragile and vulnerable, had never felt so real, so terrifying, and so imposing. Recent data from the Federal Reserve paints an alarming picture of American reality. Nearly 37% of Americans simply couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense without resorting to predatory loans with exorbitant interest rates or painful emergency sales of assets. David, even with a good salary and an apparently comfortable life, dangerously fit into this alarming statistic in a broader, deeper sense. The absence of a robust Plan B, a true financial shield that would protect him against life's blows. He knew, with painful and undeniable clarity, that he needed to act immediately, but the path forward seemed obscured by a dense fog of uncertainty and despair. The first and most crucial step of his journey would be to acknowledge the undeniable urgency of the situation and the imperative need to build, or rebuild from scratch, his emergency fund. The irrefutable truth, which many only discovered too late, is that without this protective shield, any unforeseen event, no matter how minor its initial magnitude, quickly escalates into a devastating crisis, pushing people into chronic suffocating debt, and in the most extreme and tragic cases, into humiliating and painful personal bankruptcy. David's story, though deeply personal and painful for him, is far from an isolated case. It resonates painfully with the experience of millions of Americans who live often unknowingly on a financial knife edge, just one unexpected event away from complete and irreparable ruin. Experts in personal finance and economics are unanimous and emphatic in their analyses. The absence of an adequate and substantial emergency fund is without a doubt one of the biggest and most frequent causes of personal bankruptcy in the U.S., second only to overwhelming medical expenses and abrupt, unexpected job loss. An in-depth and revealing study by CNBC, one of the most respected financial news outlets, unveiled a troubling statistic. This means that a simple car breakdown or an unexpected hospital bill can completely destabilize a family's financial life. This widespread vulnerability is not a twist of fate, nor an inevitable fatality of modern life, but rather the direct result of a complex and interconnected combination of systemic and cultural factors. Among these, the rampant and irresponsible consumer culture stands out, encouraging impulsive spending and prioritizing having over saving or investing. The regrettable and persistent lack of comprehensive and effective financial education in American schools, which leaves entire generations unprepared to manage their own money and make smart financial decisions. And perhaps most dangerous of all, the illusory and self-destructive belief that this will never happen to me, a kind of blind, unrealistic optimism that prevents prudent preparation for life's challenges and uncertainties. When the inevitable and relentless crisis strikes without warning, be it a sudden illness requiring expensive and prolonged treatments, a car breaking down at the worst possible moment, leaving the family without transportation, or a burst pipe at home that floods everything and requires urgent, costly repairs without a properly built and accessible emergency fund, the only immediate way out many see is the indiscriminate and imprudent use of credit cards or taking out loans with exorbitant interest rates and predatory terms. These loans, which initially seem to be quick and palliative solutions to an urgent problem, rapidly transform into a vicious and suffocating cycle of escalating and unpayable debts, pushing people into a deeper and deeper financial hole from which it seems humanly impossible to escape. The painful and irrefutable reality is that the vast majority of personal bankruptcy filings in the United States are preceded by some kind of force majeure event, an unexpected layoff, a serious accident, a chronic and expensive illness that, had there been a robust and accessible emergency fund, could have been managed without the need for such drastic measures and with such severe and traumatic long-term consequences for people's lives. For David, climbing out of the hole he found himself in would not be an easy task, but he knew, with renewed determination, that it was imperative to face the harsh reality of his financial situation and begin, without further delay, the construction of his much-needed financial safety net. The first crucial strategy he adopted, which proved to be a turning point, was to understand, deeply, unequivocally, and without evasion, what exactly an emergency fund is, and more importantly, how much he truly needed to accumulate to feel genuinely secure and protected against life's misfortunes. Unlike savings intended for consumer dreams, such as buying a new car or a luxurious vacation, or for major life goals like a down payment on a house, the emergency fund has a unique, inflexible, and sacred purpose: to be specifically designated to cover unforeseen events, emergencies, and unexpected situations that are beyond one's control. The golden rule, universally accepted and recommended by the most renowned personal finance experts, is to accumulate an amount equivalent to 6 to 12 months of essential expenses. This is the safety margin that allows one to face most challenges without desperation. David, armed with this clear and objective guideline, embarked on a meticulous and, at times, painful process of detailing his expenses. He created a painstaking spreadsheet, item by item, recording every expense: housing, food, transportation, healthcare, insurance. and medications, various insurances, and all fixed and variable expenses that were absolutely indispensable for his family's survival. Next, he initiated a rigorous and disciplined process of cutting unnecessary spending, that extra streaming subscription he barely used, the excessive dinners out that significantly weighed on the monthly budget, the impulsive purchases of gadgets and clothes that piled up in the closet. Every dollar saved through these conscious cuts was perceived as a fundamental brick in the construction of his financial fortress, one more step towards security. He opted for a gradual and pragmatic approach, starting with a more modest and achievable goal of accumulating the equivalent of 3 months of essential expenses. And then, as he gained confidence and additional resources, expanding that goal to 6 and finally to 12 months. Procrastination, a silent and treacherous enemy of financial health, which often prevents us from starting to save, was combated by David with a simple but incredibly effective strategy: small, automatic weekly deposits into a separate bank account, exclusively for the emergency fund. As he watched the balance grow, even slowly at first, this small achievement acted as a powerful psychological motivator, reinforcing his commitment and discipline. David learned in practice and undeniably that the secret lies not just in how much one earns, but primarily in how much one consistently saves, and most importantly, where and how one keeps this crucial money for emergencies, ensuring it is always safe and accessible. Financial education emerged as the central and unshakable pillar that allowed David not only to build his emergency fund solidly, but also to avoid the common and costly mistakes that lead many to fail in this crucial journey. He realized with crystal clear understanding that most people, when trying to build an emergency fund, make the fundamental error of leaving it in a regular checking account mixed with day-to-day money, making it susceptible to impulsive and unnecessary spending. Worse still, many invest this crucial money in high-risk applications, lured by the promise of quick and easy profits, without considering the true purpose of the fund. The primary and non-negotiable rule of an emergency fund, which David internalized, is that it must focus on security and liquidity. The money needs to be available at any time, without significant loss of value due to market fluctuations, and with immediate, almost instantaneous access in case of need. David, driven by this deep understanding, dedicated himself to researching and discovered the best and safest investment options for his fund in the U.S., those that balanced a modest return with maximum security and ease of withdrawal. The main options that stood out, and which he considered, were daily liquidity certificates of deposit offered by solid banks, which provide daily returns, low market risk, and the guarantee of redemption at any useful time. Treasury bills or Treasury notes tied to the federal funds rate, which are considered one of the safest investments in the country, backed by the full faith and credit of the government, and also offer high liquidity, redeemable any business day. And money market funds, which invest primarily in low-risk debt instruments and seek to track short-term interest rates like the federal funds rate, offering practicality and good liquidity for the investor. After analyzing the options, he chose a daily liquidity CD offered by a large, reputable bank, as this option provided the utmost security he sought, a small return that helped combat the erosion of inflation, and the unquestionable certainty that he could withdraw the money at any time, without excessive bureaucracy or financial losses. This strategic decision was absolutely crucial to avoid risking his valuable safety net during periods of financial market instability, a critical and devastating mistake that many made during past economic crises, watching their reserves melt away when they needed them most to survive. With the solid foundation of his emergency fund firmly established and growing each month, David began to think beyond the immediate present and mere financial survival. Life, with its unexpected and unpredictable challenges, had taught him powerfully that relying exclusively on a single source of income, no matter how stable it seemed, was an unacceptable and overly dangerous risk in a constantly changing world. He then actively explored strategies for generating extra income and making smart investments to accelerate not only the growth of his fund, but also, in the future, to build substantial wealth and generate passive income in the long term, ensuring even greater financial freedom. Leveraging his skills and extensive experience as a mechanical engineer, David began offering online consulting services for small projects on weekends and during his free hours. Utilizing reputable freelance platforms that connected qualified professionals with companies and individuals needing specific engineering expertise. Furthermore, he started decluttering items he no longer used at home: clothes, old electronics, furniture, selling them on online secondhand platforms and local sales groups, transforming what was once clutter into useful money. Every extra dollar he managed to generate through these additional income streams was directed without exception and with iron discipline into his emergency fund account, significantly accelerating the process of reaching his 6-month goal and then, ambitiously, his 12-month target. Parallel to this, he diligently and curiously began studying long-term investments such as diversified, exchange-traded funds which offer exposure to broad markets at low cost and shares of solid, well-established companies with proven track records of profitability, but always with the undeniable clarity that this money for growth investments would only be allocated after his emergency fund was complete, robust, and untouchable. The message that crystallized in his mind was clear and imperative. The emergency fund is the undeniable foundation of any successful financial strategy. Only after building it with solidity, ensuring security against life's unforeseen events, should one consider allocating capital to riskier investments with a focus on long-term growth and wealth building. He understood through personal experience and his studies that mixing the two, emergency fund money and risky investment money, is a common yet extremely dangerous mistake that can prove far too costly when the inevitable unexpected event occurs, leaving the individual completely unprotected and vulnerable. Building a sustainable and truly secure future meant much more to David than just having an emergency fund. It meant actively maintaining and cultivating it as an ingrained habit, a non-negotiable financial discipline for the rest of his life. He incorporated the periodic review of his expenses and his emergency fund as an integral and non-negotiable part of his monthly financial routine. Every 6 months, or whenever there was a significant change in his life, he revisited his numbers, analyzing each item of his budget, and ensuring that the value of his fund was always adjusted to his current life reality and, crucially, to inflation, which silently and relentlessly erodes the purchasing power of money over time. With every salary increase or annual bonus received, a predefined and generous portion of that amount was automatically directed to increase or replenish his fund, ensuring it never became outdated or fell below the recommended ideal. David's mindset underwent a fundamental and profound transformation. He shifted from a reactive approach of "I'll save if there is money left at the end of the month" to a proactive and disciplined stance of "I'll save first, allocate the necessary amount to the fund, and what's left is for responsible spending." This paradigm shift was truly liberating, removing anxiety and giving him much greater control over his finances. He and his family began to talk openly and without taboos about money, demystifying the topic and involving his daughters in basic and important financial decisions, such as the importance of saving for a goal, thereby cultivating a new generation that is more financially aware, responsible, and educated. David not only managed to avoid bankruptcy, a fate that seemed certain and inevitable at one point in his life, but he also built a solid and unshakable foundation for lasting prosperity and peace of mind. The deepest and most valuable lesson he learned, and one he now strives to share, was that the emergency fund is not and should never be viewed as an optional luxury for the fortunate few who already have plenty. It is a fundamental and non-negotiable necessity for everyone, a true act of self-love, unwavering responsibility towards one's family, and respect for one's future. It not only protects against the worst possible scenario during times of crisis, but even more powerfully, it frees the mind to focus on new opportunities, on personal and professional growth, on investing in oneself and one's dreams, without the constant and overwhelming shadow of financial fear hanging over one's head, allowing for a fuller and more purposeful life.